Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to Sweetwater's Guitars and Gear. We are joined this week by a very special guest. Steve Morse is here.
Hey,
thanks for coming in. Glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
You're doing a workshop this evening with Dave LaRue.
Yes, and it worked out great. We're on tour. Well, Deep Purple's on tour nearby, and we had a day off, and so finally we were able to do this.
Oh, I'm glad you're here. You're here on behalf of Ernie Ball Guitars, Music Man Guitars, and I want to be sure we talk about your signature instrument.
Sure.
But let's talk a little bit about what you're up to. I read on your website that you're getting close to 50 albums that you've recorded on, or even more perhaps at this point.
I'm not actually sure, but that includes being a guest on somebody else's album, and probably includes live albums.
Mm-hmm.
And personally, I don't think live albums are as interesting to listen to as studio albums. Like I said, to me personally.
Right.
So they may be counting those kind of things.
Right, adding them all up.
But
right.
still, there's been lots of studio time, lots of songs written.
An impressive catalog, definitely. Yeah. And what's equally impressive about it is how varied it is. Everything from the Dregs to Steve Morse Band to Kansas to Deep Purple to side projects like Angel Fire.
Yeah.
Tell us what that was about.
Well, Angel Fire was, doing some kind of acoustic style stuff, like these kind of just like, in fact, a lot of it I would play on
Nylon string.
And Sarah was a local singer that just sounded, singer-songwriter, just sounded like an angel. She had the perfect classical voice. And she didn't want to go pop and burn her voice out or anything. And her parents, and I got to know them pretty well, and they said, well, we'd like, if you could give Sarah some advice. And I didn't know what to say. I said, well, let me hear you sing. She sang, it was beautiful. So I said, really, I've got a song I've been working on. Could you sing on it? And it was just over the course of a few years, we just accumulated enough stuff for an album.
Right. Well, the album's gorgeous.
Thank you.
It really is. You also have been involved in a number of other projects. Living Loud was one that caught my ear as well, with Jimmy Barnes, correct?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, originally, it was Lee Kerslake and Bob Daisley, who had worked with Ozzy on the Randy Rhoads era stuff,
right.
and had written a lot of the material, and there was a falling out with management because, as far as them getting credit, and management went so far as to erase them from the albums and replace their parts, and then just so there was
amazing.
They wanted at some point to recreate the Randy Rhoads songs that they'd written with him and Ozzy, and that they didn't get credit for, but they wanted to re-record them. And I was originally contacted about doing that, and I said, well, I'm not the guy for this job probably, because there's other people that would know Randy's parts and his style better than I. And then the guy doing the putting everything together, Drew Thompson, he said, well, they want to do half of it as original material, so that sounds more interesting, and then half of it, recreating the stuff. I said, well, as long as there's a way I can that we can change the arrangement a little bit, so it's not like me trying to be Randy Rhoads.
Right.
And it worked out really well. It was, the guys are just such pros, real easy to work with, and I can see how easy the writing process was with them.
Right.
So, and then Jimmy walked in and just nailed everything,
Right.
I remember he got off a plane from Australia, and we were in my place in Florida, and he just sat down on the floor and started doing lyrics. The second he sat down.
Wow.
It was, yeah.
Right.
Really good work ethic with the whole band.
Right. Very cool. So your current project is Flying Colors, correct? And you have the second album is coming out less than a month now, right?
Yes.
So what's happening with that?
Well, the album's called Second Nature. That was one of Mike Portnoy's patented titles.
Right.
He always comes up with good titles. And he's sort of one of the main arrangers, or organizers, and arranger of the material. And my job is, like it is with Purple, just spit out ideas and keep, chord progressions and instrumental melodies are my specialty.
Mm-hmm.
And Casey does the lyrics as well as Neil Morse. So we have a lot of songwriting going on, and as Neil says, a lot of chefs in the kitchen.
Right.
So it gets really intense. One time Neil got up to get a cup of coffee or something, and he had this idea for a course, and when he came back, I changed it and convinced Casey that my way was better.
Right. Right.
And so we were running through the tune, and Neil comes back with a cup of coffee. He goes, "What happened to my chorus?" I said, "Get a coffee, lose a chorus."
Exactly. Lesson learned, right? Right. Don't step out during songwriting.
5 minutes is long enough to be gone.
Right. Right. So do you write with that band in similar fashion to the way that Deep Purple writes? Because my understanding is Deep Purple kind of jams songs together. You guys get together and work through ideas and put things together as a band, or is that incorrect?
I guess the difference would be that Deep Purple jams more, but the process is essentially the same. My goal is to bring in ideas, and not so much finished songs, because if you can just sell somebody on an idea, a little part of a tune, then get everybody involved and then work out from there, as opposed to what are the chances of you bringing in a song that everybody says, that's exactly what I would have done?
Right.
Yeah, so it's better just to have lots of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'd say with Flying Colors, there's a little bit more analysis, maybe, as opposed to I don't like it.
Right. Right.
And then everybody's got something to say about it, and add to it.
Right.
Like I said, 5 minutes, a lot can happen.
Yeah, yeah. And that mix has to get even more stirred up than when you work with a producer. The last Deep Purple album, you worked with Bob Ezrin, correct? Mm-hmm. And how was that experience like?
I'd worked with Bob on the last Kansas album that I was part of, the studio album called In the Spirit of Things. So I knew Bob and how he worked, and he was very intense, very, hard to please guy. You can't just do something mediocre and have him say it's okay. He notices everything. He has an unbelievable memory, and the good part of putting all that together is that he can keep track of where the song arrangement-wise was going before, where it is now, which one was better, which note, in your solo was out to him, or which phrase was working. He's like a human computer. He has a lot in common with Mike Portnoy.
Uh-huh.
They just have this, amazing, literal memory that's like I said, is confounding. I can't keep up with either one of them in the memory games.
Right, right. Does that kind of free you up as a player then? Because you can just kind of go and they'll point out things, or do you try to stay more focused? Does it make you more focused?
Good question. That's a good question. I think it makes for a better product all the way around, for sure. And it frees me up to a certain extent. There's a little bit a different vibe where you're trying to make sure, that was kind of cool. What is he going to think?
Right.
But in general, I trust, I just blindly do what I'm told after a certain point. There's a certain number of days of resistance of me trying to, be the individual and the artist, and when you're working with Bob, at some point you just have to cave in and say, I don't know, what do you think? And that's the correct way to do it.
That's the correct answer, right.
No, he is a real genius and that's what we signed him up to do, and that's why he's doing the second album.
Awesome.
The second Deep Purple album.
Right, great, great. So as a player, one of the things that you've always been known for, going all the way back to the beginning, is the number of styles that you cover. And it's interesting to me because I also play classical and then play electric.
All right.
And so managing those two disciplines, because the classical is a totally different discipline than everything else, is challenging from a practice standpoint, also from a performance standpoint. How do you approach that kind of thing? Do you differentiate the two, or do you treat them all as one?
Well, practicing for performance involves two things. One is memory, and I try to have 3 different memory methods. One is being able to hear the music in my head, you know, from beginning to end, and which part goes where. And then the other one is, of course, muscle memory, where if somebody was talking to you, you hopefully would be able to go to the next part. And the third one is kind of envisioning the harmony and the key changes, so that, you know, if everything, well, like on a solo section, what's changing during the chords? You know, not just memorizing the chord, but what about the tonality is different from this group of chords and that group of chords? And that's the way that I would, you know, I like to be familiar with the tunes, at least on that level. And when I come from another project or another album, I've got all that material, you know, the 12 songs we recorded, plus the 10 or 20 that I brought in or that we worked on that didn't get recorded.
Right.
So I've got this whole cluttered mess in my mind all the time. So I do need to review things, and, you know, I do make mistakes in the memory area. So that's something that I try to work on before a performance. And technique is a real challenge, you know, as I'm obviously getting younger with each year. And, you know, there's no such things as, you know, tendon problems or joint problems.
Right.
As I get younger, it's something that I just have to work on every day.
Right, right. Do you split your time up? Do you say, I'm going to do this much time on this and this style, this much time and this?
No, not stylistic. I'm sorry. Yeah. As far as the styles go, to me, there's not much difference from one style to the next. As far as playing guitar goes, like if you're playing slide, you know, you would be using fingers, I think, to get the best sound, to get the most control. But if you're playing jazz, you might be using fingers. If you're playing classical, you might be using fingers. And every you know, the same chords that you might play in you know, a prog intro. You find the same, not played the same way, but the same chord progressions in heavy metal music. You know, it seems like they're just little features that are different from one style to another. So I don't see that much of a difference. And really, style-wise, people differentiate themselves more from the way they look and dress and you know, image-wise than I would say technique-wise or sonically. Say if you're doing a lot of tapping stuff, you're going to be playing a guitar style that might have a lot of gain, but, you know, the original tapping guys were doing it on acoustic, you know?
Sure.
So, yeah, I'm going on and on about style, but I guess my point is there doesn't need to be any or much division at all between styles. Like I said, you take the same exact chord progression, treat it a little differently, and you can call it this or that style, you know?
Right. Although you shift pretty effortlessly from, just to give you a couple of examples. On the introduction, you had on the pipe, and you also had General Lee, with Albert Lee playing with you, and that was very authentically country. On the pipe was definitely more of a heavier rock fusion-y kind of thing. You've got too many notes. You've got some more Celtic influence things, and you're playing those very authentically. Did you study those styles then to be able to bring those details in?
Okay. Well, I think that's writing differences. And yeah, or maybe playing a country tune, you use a clean sound, and something like tuning notes at a more of a overdrive. So playing wise, not much different, but tone wise, yes, and writing wise, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do really like Celtic influence, and the European folk music in general, I think, shaped our American bluegrass so much. The same way that American blues shaped British rock a lot. So I think those are two very important, I guess, basic building blocks. In fact, traditional classical, traditional jazz, the old-timey folk or European folk music, and American blues, I think, are sort of styles that everybody needs to master.
Right.
And there's, again, I don't think that big of a difference between them, but you take the jazz and mix it with the blues, and you can be doing some more extended blues things instead of you have. And just a tiny bit of cross-pollination is all that it takes to come up with your own style.
Right, right. So when you're improvising then, are you thinking that directly about the chord progression that you're working over so you can put those little things in, or are you at a point now, I would assume, where you're more just relying on your ear to take you there?
Well, yeah, when everything's perfect, you just close your eyes and see what happens. And the good part about that is that every solo is different and you never get bored with what you're playing.
Mm-hmm.
The bad part of that is that if you don't know what you're going to get, sometimes you get a B minus, and sometimes you get an A plus.
Right.
And usually somewhere in between. So I've always just kind of, said the solo has got to be the expression of now. It's got to be, an exception might be when we're playing a song like the introduction, where the solo turned out to be melodic, which would probably be an accident in my case, but
No.
it turned out to be melodic, and to the point where I hear it as a melody, and just say, well, okay, well, that's not really a solo now, it's a melody. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, the solo is definitely what's happening now. Mm-hmm. And people that have seen the Dregs play or Purple, that follow a lot of shows in a row, know that about us, that solos are going to be different, and they may be similar sounding in terms of style and range of where we do, and maybe the last lick is always the same to cue the guys in the band, things like that. But it's better for me and more entertaining for me to just close my eyes and say, here goes nothing.
Right, right. Do you feel, after now it's been more than 20 years in Deep Purple, I think you're the longest standing guitarist in Deep Purple. When you came into that, though, they already had a legacy built up. Did you feel a lot of pressure to adhere to that legacy? And has that lessened as you've gone along, or did you come in and say, I'm just going to put my stamp on it and that'll be it?
Well, another good question. This is so important for somebody coming into a band that already has a history. First of all, I already knew this from seeing people come and go in the Dregs, seeing how the fans react, on a microcosmic scale, and then when I was in Kansas, replacing Kerry Livgren, which obviously nobody can replace him.
Sure.
But seeing that the fans want the original person, but if they really love the band, they will kind of like, all right, sell me. You got 3 seconds, give me the pitch. They will give you a chance, but they really are longing for the original person. So you have to pay respect and homage to what they're used to hearing. Mm-hmm. So there has to be some of that, and a long career of being in cover bands, I think, helped me straddle that line between recreating the recording and playing what I think works with this guitar, this sound, this person, and this situation. You know, we don't have 25 overdubs of this. It's just this one thing. What's going to work the best? So, like on Highway Star, you know, I play the very recognizable melodic parts of the solo, and then go off a little bit, and then bring it back to stuff. And Smoke of the Water is a little bit more open. I just play the last like, and then all the solo before that is just me. But I do try to consciously make phrasing that's easily digestible as much as possible. You know, it's sort of thinking more like Joe Walsh, you know, than John McLaughlin in terms of playing my own style of Deep Purple hits. So, like I said, straddling the line, a little bit of old and some new. But when I do my own interpretation, I do try to. I'm more aware of making the phrasing, you know, somewhat recognizable.
Right. Yeah. Sure. Do you feel the same, or do you take the same approach with the writing side of it, or the ideas that you throw out? Do you say that this is not Deep Purple, or I shouldn't even throw this out, or?
No, I try not to prejudge, because when we were doing our first album together, I was just messing around with this. I was just making a little tune that I was messing around with while we were setting up for the next song, and Roger and John Lord were kind of like, "Hey, that's really interesting, you know, and it doesn't sound like anything we've done yet."
Right.
And that was a kind of a new approach for Deep Purple, was doing something that was outside the comfort zone, and I was really pushing them to do acoustic stuff, because when I saw Led Zeppelin, I loved the heavy Jimmy Page stuff, but also when he sat down and did Black Mountainside, or they came out with Gallows Pole, and these kind of folky acoustic things as a relief, I thought it was really cool.
Sure.
So we on one of the albums they did. And it was just in a real proud sort of Scottish march kind of way, but acoustic. And so those were the ways that I was pushing them a little bit without realizing it. You know, just the fact that they were, I think, just open to a change. Normally, I just bring in lots of ideas, and my approach is that if I throw out lots of ideas, they'll pick some that they think fits the band. And rather than try to prejudge it.
Right. I would expect that helps them to stay fresh as well, because they don't know what you're going to bring in. There'll be new ideas flying around and things they can try that'll help them take the band forward. Yeah.
Well, in fact, the new album is got that kind of thing in it. We got some really uncliche rock stuff.
Awesome.
Goes into very reliable rock, typical beat, but the intro of that it's like, well, I don't know, it's horn fifths played on a guitar. You know, it's something you just don't hear.
Right.
So I'm glad that they're open to experiment. And as far as the fans go, I think it's about, you know, there's always going to be that percentage that lives as waiting like this with the keyboards, you know, on the internet for anything new to come out and say, "This sucks. You know?
Right. Which you can't. What can you do about that?
Yeah, the definition of a microsecond.
Right.
The time from a new product is released until somebody's typing, "This sucks," on the internet.
Exactly. So speaking of unique ideas and non-cliches, you have some very interesting things going on here with your Music Man signature guitars. Now, this is based back on your original Telecaster, correct?
Yeah, when I'm playing with the Dregs, it had evolved pretty much into a 4 pickup guitar, and this is basically the refinement of that, and was the original Steve Morse model signature. And the switch over here is sort of like the vestigial organ that slowly went away. So on the new Y2D model, it's not there. But I use this for the... Yeah, I started with the Strat is what that goes down to, and that's just a Strat type pickup.
Okay, so that's
rhythm.
The single coil.
Yeah.
Then. Okay.
Then you can combine these two. Anyway, the way it goes is this guy is the the reliable rhythm sort of the. This is an important feature. The tone control changes the sound.
Mm-hmm.
Some guitars it doesn't. It just makes it less trebly. I like that a lot for rolling on, getting vowel-like sounds, or maybe doing chord line. Which sounds different than doing it with a volume. So I use the tone control a lot. For instance, with Deep Purple, when I hit a chord, as soon as Ian starts singing, I roll off the high end. I do this all the time. And by rolling off the top end, it gives room in the mix to hear the vocals. And my whole aim is to try to give our sound man a reason to keep me in the mix.
Right.
Normally, the guitar is just reduced to some, white noise in the background, and then suddenly comes up really loud, 3 notes into a solo.
Right.
And I really try and work around and give space in arrangements. Like if Don's playing a solo, I'll be like, instead of going, I'll be like, leaving lots of holes if I'm going to play loud at all.
Right.
And then it doesn't hurt at all to bring down the volumes. Which brings me to the reason for having the single coil pickup. Just what I'm doing right here is using the single coil. I've got the amp on high gain, so it's a high gain distorted sound. But I'm getting a clean sound because I've got the as you turn down, you lose some of the artificial harmonics that give you apparent high end. And so I turn the guitar way down, like to 1 or 2, and then switch to the single coil pickup, and I can get a clear. And that's an example of how I would use these pickups in a rhythm situation. Mm-hmm. Another great thing about having the single coil right here, and you notice it's pulled far away from the strings. It's almost disappearing into the pickguard.
Yeah, it's way down the pickguard, right.
and that is intentionally to lose gain. Helps me control the gain. Combine it with the humbucking, and you get, well, I love this kind of sort of slightly honky country. So let me try it with a clean sound. Maybe you can hear this better. Kind of, it's got a hollowed out, mid-rangey, slightly out of phase sound.
Right.
All right, and we move on. This was the Strat rhythm pickup, which we covered down here. This is why people think the switching is confusing. It makes sense to me.
Once you learn it, it's all right there under your fingers, right?
This pickup is a fairly warm pickup, and one of the reasons it is because of placement. If you put 24 frets on the guitar, you won't get this kind of sound.
Right.
You could take the exact same pickup and just move it up here, and you'll get a totally different sound. So the placement is a big part of it. This is a nice smooth. And the idea is to have a utility kind of warm for clean things. Combine the two pickups together, and you get. And then when soloing, I switch. When I'm up high, I use this pickup. Now I'm back on the bridge pickup, because down low you need the harmonics, the high harmonics, to bring those low notes out, or else they'll get too muddy. So I switch all day long as I'm playing anything. If you happen to be here at the clinic, you'll see that. So that's my bread and butter right there, going between these pickups. And being able to combine them, like I said, for clean things and having the combinations, and as well as the single coil as a place to go to collect the sound and not have it be distorted and out of control without having to go to a pedal board or anything.
Right, right.
So and it's very light guitar. It balances. All my guitars have to balance because have spent a lot of time practicing.
Right.
So if you can sit comfortably with the guitar, and you'll notice here there's no cutaway. The reason for that is to provide the same sort of support as a similar support as you would find on an acoustic guitar, but rounded edge. So it's comfortable, light, balanced, but it doesn't feel so different to where if you pick up an acoustic guitar that you're playing a foreign instrument.
Right.
And fender spacing on the frets, jumbo frets, and 22 instead of 24, so that this can be in the right place.
Right, you get that harmonic.
And I love these kind of features where you can adjust the truss rod with just a nail or something.
Don't have to take the neck off.
Instantly.
Yeah, right, right.
And as I flew from Florida, where it's 99% humidity, to the desert, where everything just instantly gets dried up. It's nice that if I don't, if I just pick up and say, oh, this is a little bit, I or Tommy can just, it's done.
And tweak it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're ready to go.
This feature is something they suggested, which I really like now. With the Fender, I had to have a string tree, two of them, to keep the strings from coming off. These are shorter and a straight pull. There's no There's no going off at an angle,
Right.
like some other guitars. And best of all, it's shorter. I can put it in a gig bag, carry it underneath my arm, and get it on board playing all the time.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, there's been two very weird instances where I had to go through some changes, but that was like 9/11 paranoia stuff.
Right.
But normally I could get it in the overhead of any small commuter, which is
That's an accomplishment.
and it's very important to me.
Yeah.
Because I've seen that, how much love the luggage gets.
Well, obviously the guitar is perfectly set up for, I mean, a lot of players have a dynamic approach to playing, their volume goes up and down, but I would say that you also have a tonally dynamic approach, that you're constantly working with your tones and things, and this guitar is perfectly set up to facilitate that.
Oh yeah, this is the guitar. If I had to play any gig, just I'd play all night and changing styles, and for being in a cover band or something like this, I would think it would be perfect.
Yeah, I don't know how much more versatile you could get.
Well, and best of all, it's light. It doesn't hurt to wear it all night.
Right,
So-
right. Right, and you're combining that with, just to really quickly, you have two amps set up, and what you're actually stepping on here as you were playing is you've got two different delays with pedals that you're bringing the delay in and out so you can balance that as well. So you're not only tonally dynamic, you're also dynamic with your effects and things too. You have a lot going on when you're playing.
Yeah, my approach is a wet, dry. The dry always stays the same, and the wet, when I press down the pedal, you just get the delay added to the tone instead of it changing the tone to the amp. The dry stays exactly the same, and we're just adding a little bit of delay feedback to the second amp.
Right.
And the one thing that makes that a little tricky is that the soundman has to have them both up equally, even when you're only getting sound from this one. He has to trust that you can control the level of the delays.
Right. Right, but if it's right for you on stage, it should be right then going out the front. So.
Yeah, the idea is to gang the two, balance them, and gang the two together as one.
Right, right.
But you don't get the intermodulation distortion of having a delay going into a distorted amp.
Right, you can run all the delay and not have it get messy,
Yes.
not have it get muddy
Yeah.
and cluttered up sounding. That's awesome. Great advice. Steve, thanks so much for coming in.
Well, thanks.
We're excited about the
doing
workshop tonight. I think it's going to be a blast. You and Dave are going to be laying out some tunes and doing some talking, I assume, as well.
Oh, yeah, no problem talking.
That's great. Thanks so much for coming in. We're
Thank
looking
you.
forward to the new Deep Purple record, the new Flying Colors record. You're out on tour with Deep Purple. Man, you got a lot going on.
Yeah, well, musicians have to.
You got to stay busy,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Right. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'm Mitch Gallagher. Thanks for joining me for Sweetwater's Guitars and Gear.